Hey, so my name is Keenan. I'm starting off with a new video series, and it's going to be a series of instructional lessons, and it's also going to be kind of like a daily log and journal of my practice. For starters, the way I warm up, I don't use a met. Those things are good for when you're playing to a song. Playing to a met is very stiff and regimented, so playing loose to warm up is the best way to prevent injury. Just got my amp on clean. You don't want to put any distortion on when you're warming up. If you mess up, you want to be able to hear it. See, I'm still stiff, so it's not really going to work out very evenly for me, so I just got to loosen up. So that's pretty good for that right now. My left arm needs to now loosen up. My right arm is starting to feel its way through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the 7 positions. So the guitar has 7 spots throughout the neck where scales can be played, and that's like the complete understanding of the neck. But there's actually 5 positions within there that are the focus positions. So I'm going to do the 7 complete positions, which are going to pretty much hit about 98% of the neck. I say 98 because there's a few notes you skip, but they're kind of like out of the way, and you wouldn't really naturally go to those notes to grab that sound. So for the most part, this will cover the whole neck. I predominantly practice in the key of G. It's the first scale I learned. I've been working in that scale since 2010, so like more than 7 years. So for starters, your middle finger, you're going to use that as your lead finger. You're going to start off on the 3rd fret of the 6th string, and that's going to be your G root. Now technically the key of G is G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. So F sharp is actually the 2nd fret right here on the low E. So we're not going to start on the F sharp though, because we want to go from root to root. And that's really important because it's going to help with your hearing. So want that off. So those are the G's in the 1st position. Give me a second, I haven't done this one in a while. That's the octave. So this shape right here, starting on the 15th fret, is the octave here. So I just played all the way through the 7 positions. I hit the octave, which is now technically the 8th position, but it's a repeat of the one up here. Now I'm going to go back to the 2nd position, but it's now above the octave. So I was actually hitting a few notes that didn't have frets. And the reason is because actually when you hit the fourth position, the octave of it, you go over the fretboard. So really that's just for me trying to be funny and have fun with it. But those 7 positions, if you were listening, you could tell they were kind of choppy. They weren't very even. Really wasn't about getting it even as just moving my hand. And just getting my kind of like stiff fingers moving. Again, it's not about being in time. So now I'm going to do the 5 positions. I really don't warm up too much on the 7 because I've spent so much time with them. But maybe I'll do a video later on where I explain them all the way through. The 5 positions though is where like the theory gets interesting because that's like the cornerstone of jazz. So if you know your pentatonics, you already know where the 5 positions are. It's just a matter of you practicing them in relation to the complete form. So pentatonics only have 5 tones. These actually have all 7 of the tones in the scale. So this is like the next step after that. Okay, that's the first shape, or actually that's technically the 3rd shape in the 1st position. If you go into the key of C, the 1st shape in the 1st position, that's the very beginning. Because we're in the key of G, the shapes rotate. So really, the 1st shape, which is in C, is way up here, around the 12th fret. But it's not key of C. Everything's been rotated. Everything's moving. Now the next shape. Shape after that. So basically I just played through the 5 shapes. There's one right here, goes between the 3rd fret and the 5th fret. There's one on the 4th, or the 5th and 7th. 7 and kind of like 10. It's a little bit more of a stretch one. And then there's a 9 through 12, and then a 12 through 15. And that's kind of where like generally the neck is broken up. So those 2 extra shapes that are in the 7th position, or in the 7 positions, they're kind of like the word and. You have a sentence, you have another sentence. Those are kind of like the 5 positions. And the word and is like a sentence. It is not like a sentence. It glues 2 sentences together. And is like a phrase that connects 2 ideas together. So like if you're playing here and you're playing here and you want to connect them together, there's a shape in between that will do that. So in the key of G, going back to playing the 5 shapes. And then right here, this is the 2nd shape. Always go octave to octave. Right here, you've got the shape right here and here. If you want to connect them, the 2nd shape of the 7 bridges that gap. And that becomes really important when you start playing 7th chords because like here's a G major 7th that uses a root in the 1st position but is predominantly played in the 2nd position. So that part, that jump, that whole shape that I just did right there, it combines. And that's an example of where you would use those 2 extra shapes that are contained within the 7. That's where you would use them because it's connecting 2 spaces together. Here's the 1st position, here's the 2nd position, and then this kind of intermediary shape is gluing them together. And that's kind of like the word and. It's connecting these together, but it's not its own shape. It takes parts of the 1st one and parts of the 2nd one to make it. Understanding like how those pieces fit together will help you visualize the neck. When you can visualize the neck, you know where things are and more importantly where things are going. And you might not know the song, you might not know the music, but like knowing your neck will enable you to learn the song. You might not be able to do it on the fly. Like if you're at a jam, you're probably screwed if you don't know like the chord changes. and you don't know, like, you know, what the style is, but you can go back after getting your ass kicked at that jam and figure out like what it is you needed to do, where it is you needed to go, because you know your 5 and your 7